Hey guys, it's Lupe here with Team Empire. Today we're going to be going over my premium deck. Today was day 2. I used the Grand Blue as my clan. I played Negrobolt. Had a pretty good day. It's a little bit of a meme deck, but it actually can still wins, and it has great matchups against Narukami, which is arguably the best deck in the format right now. So it does really well against that. It also does really well against Steam Maidens. Just being able to have huge numbers and keep up with their huge numbers on their turn with high shield value. And same thing with Dimension Police. Being one of the few decks that can actually keep up with their insane power gain, it just makes it very, very strong. But the problem is it's not like meta Grin, and it does suffer to its own playstyle. So we're gonna start off with going over the grade 3s. So first of all, we have the main man himself, Negrobolt. He has a very interesting skill. He came out in one of the clan collections. So he completely counters a normal Grand Blue, because his first skill is, he has 3 Vanguard skills. His first skill is, at the beginning of your ride or main phase, you bind every non-trigger unit in your drop. And Grand Blue has no way of getting that back in V besides 1 card. Then his second skill is, for every 10 cards in your drop zone, when he attacks, your front row gains plus 20k and he gains plus 1 crit. So this power gain is insane and allows us to hit with huge numbers. And while our rear guards may only be 1 damage, it's either going to make the opponent take that damage or guard with 2 to 3 cards from hand. And then lastly, he also allows us to play a great defensive game, because he has a similar skill, but instead of 10k or 20k, it's for every 10 cards in our drop, our shield values gain plus 5k. So he's very strong.
And that's for every unit, right?
Yeah, for every 10k. Yeah. It's just he counts cards besides his first skill. And then we play the 1 Beatrice, because if you go first, you can go into Negrobolt. In fact, today I did that against Narukami, and I almost OTK'd him. But you don't want to do that, because you run the risk of binding cards before you need to. So just the 1-of helps having a better ride target if you go first. And since we're Grand Blue, we have several ways to grab her. Then next, we play 2 Skull Dragons. This may seem a little weird, as most meta decks play either 3 to 4. But he isn't as important as he is normally in this deck. He's just a nice beater if you can get him out late game, but he's not really necessary. But Skull Dragon is still a boy, so we run 2. And lastly, for our grade 3s, we run 2 Ursop Dragon. This guy is insane in this deck, because there's a combo we'll get into later with one of the strides, the main stride in the deck, Bad Bounty, that these boys just come out for free, allowing you to have up to 6 attacks. And so he works really nicely with the deck. So that's it for our grade 3s. Then we'll move on to our grade 2s. Starting off, we run 3 Columbard, because Columbard is just busted. And he allows us to grab anything we need going forward in our deck. And he works really well. I bumped him up to 3 because I realized that I need to see, this deck needs to see Sleeve Tugging Bell every turn pretty much once you get into Negrobolt. And sometimes he helps because you don't have her in hand, but you have her in deck still. And you have at least 2 Counterblast. So he just helps with that, because you can just grab her and still put all your stuff back. And besides, Columbard is just good for grabbing anything that you need. Then, of course, his partner in crime, Greed Shade. Just being able to grab anything that he puts in there and add it back to hand is insane. Also, just his own skill, milling 2 and grabbing it, really good. Plus, his gaining 5k comes up more than you'd think. Then we run the 1 Maple, just because free body, so why not? It actually does help sometimes, just having her. Just a cute body you can keep reviving. And then run 1 of what's his name? I barely go into this guy. Dragon Undead Ghoul Dragon. He's the old Legion mate for Negrobolt, and in V he's the only way to put cards back from your bind zone into deck. He's mostly here for a late game, because you do go through your deck very, very quickly. And so late game, he's really useful to make sure you can still go bad bounty into Negrobolt by putting up to 6 cards back. And he becomes a free body at that point because he calls himself. Lastly, we run Cannoneer just to go with the old Beatrice into Cannoneer combo, just so that we can kill pesky rear guards. You know, it messes up spikes. It can mess up Pale Moon. So it's pretty good for just getting rid of pesky units. And that's all our grade 2s. And now grade 1. The main girl herself. Without her, this deck would not exist. Sleeve Tugging Bell. She's a great card in standard for Zorga, but in this deck, she is the queen because without her, the deck would completely fall apart. She puts everything back into drop after it was in bind zone. So she works perfectly with Negrobolt. And she also gets plus 5k for every card. I can consistently get her to at least be a 67k, but usually she's like an 80 plus k beater. So she's really insane. And then next, we have 3 Skeleton Sea Navigator, because I mean he just helps sets up the drop zone. Just turboing 5 every turn, absolutely insane. So he's a 3 of. Then we have 2 Tommy, because we do run quite a bit of grade 3s and we do want to see at least a Beatrice. If we need to ride her, we need to see Negrobolt in drop. We want our Ursops in drop. But we really only need 2 in Negrobolt, so we only run 2 Tommy. Plus the 5k can help as a booster. Then next, we run 2 Sea Strolling. Sea Strolling in this deck is insane, because her Vanguard skill is nice, but you don't really want to ride her. You want to ride her for her second skill, because it's at the end of the battle, if she attacked or boosted, you can mill the top 2 cards of your deck. And if you milled 1 trigger or more, you can retire her and draw a card. So she can go up to 3 cards in your drop zone. And with Negrobolt, you want to turbo to at least 20 cards in drop. So she's just really good. And another card we run as a 2 of, which works really well, is this Sylvanhorn Beast. Just being able to empty out Soul and mill 2 cards is insane. And so his skill is Soul Blast 1, retire himself like a top 3. Call 1 to a back row rear guard and mill the other 2. So he just helps mill. And we run him as a 2 of because if we can see at least one of them, we're doing pretty good. And I can consistently see 1 of each in my hand each game. Then we run 2 of Negrobolt. He's just pretty good, allowing us to get our Skull Dragons if we need them. He allows us to get anything that we really need late game, and he also puts himself back into deck, which helps with deck out again. And then lastly, our final grade 1 is just Sanctitude. Very important, I think, in almost any, if not every, premium deck. And since we're Grand Blue, we can easily grab this anytime we want. So it's really good in this deck. And then we'll go on to our grade 0s. So starting off with, I like Pirate Kid, but just any V starter, just for that extra draw and the quick shield if you go second. And then let's see, we have the Overtrigger. We run Bless Favored just because there's no real need to run the vanilla one, since we already get so much power and you want as much crits as possible. Since Negrobolt already gets crits, putting more on him is just, why not? But you want it for those rear guards because they're hitting for 50 to 60k plus each turn, so having crits on them is insane. And then we run just 4 of the heal guards just because they're insane. Being able to reduce opponent's crit or plus 10k for the rest of your turn, they're just very important in any deck. And then onto our crits, we run 4 of Chad. Chad is a Chad because he allows us to stride without discarding a grade 3, and just this deck needs as many crits as possible. So we also run 4 of the Kraken Boy, because you don't really need the soul crits in this deck because you want to empty out soul as much as possible to fill up the drop even more. So I just like running these for aesthetic, but just really I think any 15k is worth it because again, they'll increase by increments of 5, so they can become 30k shields at some point. Then lastly, for our crits, we run 2 of the Crit Sentinel because you don't really need to draw in this deck since everything you need is in drop already. And the only 2 pieces you really need to draw are only Negrobolt and what's her name? Immediately forgot. Sleeve Tugging Bell. Those are the only 2 key pieces for the deck. So just having 30Ks that can become 45Ks at some point is insane. And then we just run the 1 draw PG in case we do need an extra PG. And what's really funny is since he has a base of 0, you can just use him without paying the cost. So sometimes I'll just use him as a 5k or a 10k or 15k shield without using his discard cost. So that's it for the main deck. And then this is a Protect clan, and we use Protect 1 because since we're running only 1 actual PG, we need the PGs when we arrive. So we run the 4 of those, and then onto the G zone. The main G unit in this deck is Bad Bounty. Bad Bounty is insane with this deck because it allows us to swing with him first, then go into Negrobolt and call out our Ursut Dragons and just have a full fresh board for Negrobolt's insane power gain that he gives them. So it's just a really good 5 drives with his 3 and then Negrobolt's 2. And I run the 3 of because you want to go into that pretty much every turn. Then we do 2 Bartholomew because it does come up sometimes since you're feeling the drop very quickly. So he can be a late game finisher if you don't want to go into Negrobolt because you're low in deck. So he just helps out by making your opponent guard with 2 or more. And then next we have, I just have 1 of her just for aesthetic. Very nice card. And then we have 2 of Negranora, just because it does come up sometimes if you have to go into Beatrice first and you don't have Negrobolts in drop or in hand. It sometimes comes up, so we run the 2 of. Then we do 1 of regular Obadiah and then Big Obadiah. So Big Obadiah actually came up several times today, as since Negrobolt moves everything from drop to bind at the beginning of my main phase. There was times where I didn't have Sleeve Tugging Bell in hand because she was in drop, and she would either still be in my bind zone or in deck, so I'd have to get her out some way, and so Big Obadiah was the way I would get her. Grabbing her directly from deck or using Gold Dragon to put her back in deck, and then using Big Obadiah's skill to get her out. So I've actually used him more than I thought I would, but just both Obadiahs are very good depending on the situation. Then for G guards, we run 2 of the new G guard. She just works very well with Grand Blue, but especially in Negrobolt since we're turboing our drop zone very quickly. Since her skill has been placed on Guardian Circle, CB1 reduce your opponent's crit by -1 for every 10 cards in drop. So she just works really well with Negrobolt. So we run as a 2 of. Next we run 2 of Negro Lily, also as a 2 of just for the combo with Beatrice and Skeleton Cannoneer to get rid of a pesky opponent rear guards. Just a very strong combo, being able to retire on our turn. Then we do a 1 of Negranora and a 1 of Negromode just because they're both pretty situational. There's a couple of times where I almost G-guard into him because late game he becomes a 30k by himself. Then with Negrobolt, he's getting +15, so he becomes a 45k shield by himself. So every now and then I do go into him. It's pretty situational. Overall though, Negrobolt is very fun, being able to be incredibly aggro while also incredibly defensive. It is a more of like a meme build, but with the new ban list, it might actually be a stronger meme build just because my only losses there were Steam Maidens, and I lost to the Colossus. My opponent's final turn, I had enough to 1-card guard everything because of Negrobolt, but he made it 2 to guard, so I lost because of that. And then I lost due to Stunverse spamming, so I think if this current ban list had been out then, maybe would have seen Negrobolt on that fight chart, but overall the deck's pretty fun.